Welcome back, listeners. Johan and I are thrilled to be joined by an exceptional and very special guest, someone who's contributed a lot to us and our business, who's very close to the Early Adopters Hub as an advisor and first ever member, early adopter of the Early Adopters Hub, as we like to say. So, great to have you here, Alastair Barlow.
Hey Jack, how you doing? Hey Johan, great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And we know you're a busy guy because every time we try and get time in your calendar, we're talking months and months away. And so we had to get in early, but we managed to get it. And yeah, we do thank you for your time. So I'll
I
start
think
by
I think I
giving.
think you only snuck in because my PA's on holiday at the moment, and she wasn't able to swat it away and push it to a more appropriate time. So I think that's how you snuck through the hole there.
We'll take our luck. We'll take what we can get. Yeah, every minute with you is valuable. And look, for anyone who's listening who doesn't know you, hopefully there's not many of them, but look, you're obviously someone who's pretty critical to the accounting industry. You do a lot. You give a lot of your time, not just run an amazing firm. You're the CEO and co-founder of one of the most innovative accounting and data analytics firms in the world, I'd say, Flinder, where you help fast-growing and complex businesses. You're also responsible for one of the best accounting tech meetups worldwide. Flinder takes the piss, a ski trip that's on my bucket list. You're also a serial strategic advisor. You work with Everyone Who Matters, Accounting Web, Digital Accountancy Show. You're also an elected panel member of the ACCA. And of course, you play a very critical role at the Early Adopters Hub as our strategic advisor. You've been here since day zero before me. So, that's something you've got on me for sure. Um, Before all of that, you spent 12 years in a variety of roles at PwC before you then founded your own luxury clothing brand. So I suppose how you got into fashion might be a conversation for another time. But honestly, that wasn't something I knew before I started preparing for this session. So you've done a lot more than I thought. And yeah, have I missed anything? Was there anything you wanted to amend in that intro?
It sounds quite fun, doesn't it? Well, I think it was 16 years at PwC, but I'll let you off on that. But it was a great intro. I guess kind of overall, I feel really passionate about the world of accounting, whether that's technology, whether that's firms, whether that's on the client side and improving that and improving the experience and overall giving businesses what they need and should be armed with to make great decisions, hire people, grow, and transform economies ultimately. So yeah, it's been great seeing the early adopters hub rise from just an idea as well, and be involved in some of those other things that you mentioned as well. There is another e-commerce business I set up a few years ago, which was there was a craze for matcha tea, if you remember. What, 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years ago, something like that. So I had this great idea of setting up a matcha e-commerce business where we got matcha shipped over from Japan, I think it was, and then sold under a label that we created as well. But that became more hassle than it was worth, because there was me printing off labels that on a brand I designed called Ocha Matcha, and a Shopify website I built, and all the brand assets, and doing all the Facebook marketing and such like, and then getting home at the end of the day after PwC, after long days at PwC, and then figuring out, right, how am I going to get to the post office and post these little tiny pots of, I don't know, 30 grams or so of matcha tea. So yeah, I guess kind of, overall, those two businesses were while I was at PwC, and it was trying to scratch that creative itch that I had, that kind of itch for doing something a bit more innovative, having more autonomy, and yeah, just an outlet of something that was fun. Yeah,
Yeah, well, it obviously takes a lot to keep you busy. You wear a number of hats already, and that sounds like it's been the case for a while. So, I mean, along with Flinder, you're also building a tech product of your own. I understand you're partway through that journey. Can you give us a little more insight into why you decided to go down that route? And aren't you doing enough?
yeah, cool. So I think first of all, the first thing to say is a big shout out to my co-founder and business partner, Luke, who is not always on podcasts, is not always kind of on stage, but is an integral part, and actually is hugely important in the journey that we're on. So while it might sound like I do do a lot of those things. There's huge support in the business between Luke and myself for kind of what we do, how we do it, and supporting each other. So I think that's the first thing to say, and also having I use the word co-founder or business partner in accounting or running an accounting firm is hugely beneficial. I just cannot imagine having all the hats that it needs just as one kind of proprietor in that business. So that does afford us to do other things and kind of, get involved in lots of different things. So I think back to your question was, why did we start that? So if you wind back, I think 6 years at PwC, I was leading the business unit at PwC called my finance partner. And that was PwC's way or PwC's strategy of trying to work with much smaller, innovative, nimble businesses. And one of the things there we were doing was we drew insights from what was going on in large multinational finance functions, and that was all around this concept of being as efficient as possible with process and technology. It was around being well controlled with the right controls and technology in place, but ultimately they were leading into how do we deliver as much insight to the business as possible, and that was through business partnering, technology, and maybe a few other things. And so at that time, cloud accounting in the UK was becoming a bit more prevalent. And so PwC set up this business unit called My Finance Partner, and they adopted this technology called Tableau, which you may be familiar with, right? And so Tableau was really kind of at that time was really only relevant for large businesses because of you needed these Tableau writers or developers, and you needed a kind of a product to write the Tableau packs. Reading a Tableau pack was free. So we could write these Tableau packs with kind of deep insights or relatively deep insights on what's going on in the finance side of things, and share them with clients who could click a bunch of buttons and it'd be really, really informative to them as to what's going on in the business. And so that was kind of probably stage one of that. Let's deliver insight to clients. Ultimately, obviously, Luke and I left that business. He was also there. Left that business in 2017. And set up Flinder, of which MFP was the genesis. Now, one of the things we were really passionate about, well, there was a stack of things that a stack of lessons learned from that, shall we say, right? And which we took and built Flinder with as kind of the core DNA. And one of those things was around this concept of delivering insight. And we felt really passionate in our careers. We worked with businesses, and what they really valued was a deeper understanding of the business, and not just the financial information. Well, first of all, financial information that was one, accurate, so they had confidence in it, and two, financial information that was as timely as possible to make quick decisions, to react to what's going on, or be as proactive as possible. And coupled with that, businesses actually, what they really care about is business decisions, not just financial decisions. They care about business decisions. And so this kind of interaction or connection between financial information and operational information to us was really, really important. I always say, finance information tells you what's happened in the business, whereas operational information tells you why it's happened. Yeah. So we wanted to deliver the what and the why, so you can make the changes going forward. And so on day one, we started with a product called Clipfolio, which is a Canadian product, reasonable, well, very good product for what we started when we started working with it. And so we came up with this concept of a smart finance function, which is, very different to an accounting firm, but we were delivering a finance function at a smaller scale to an SME. So we were doing kind of, everything you'd expect from a shared service center. We were delivering business partnering through a portfolio CFO, and we were delivering this kind of rich insight, or as rich as it could be, with Clipfolio, which was a cloud platform. It was accessible on the price point for SMEs, and we were bringing in zero data into that, and we were bringing other system data into that. So that could be a CRM, or it could be an e-commerce system, or it could be spreadsheet, or it could be a bunch of other things. And so we started life delivering that, which was very accessible to our clients, very accessible to us, and we white labeled that product. So it was, you logged in a subdomain of Flinder. It looked a bit like Flinder because it was kind of branded like that in our brand. to the extent we could do. And it worked for a while. We had a number of fee paying clients on it, and we had pretty much all of our actual finance clients running on it as well for a certain amount of financial data. The other ones might have operational data. And we had some clients that was purely operational data. They didn't have anything to do with finance on it. That's how much they value this operational data. And we had some clients with over 100 people accessing this data on a daily basis, which was fantastic to see. So that the hypothesis worked there. Then kind of, 3 or 4 years on, we kind of started experiencing wanting to be able to do more with the data, having larger volumes of data and data sets, and wanted to be able to manipulate the data in more ways than a white labeled product could do. So we kind of got into the end of the road in terms of what we could do with Clipfolio. So at that point, we had in the middle of the night, and Johan's probably very familiar with me being, that sounds really, really weird with me being awake in the middle of the night. What I mean by that is he's very familiar with me waking up in the middle of the night with ideas and being on Slack and slacking him in what probably is the middle of your day and is the middle of my night. So I woke up one night a couple of years ago and thought, actually, why don't we build our own product? And that's when the best of my ideas happen, is in the middle of the night, when I'm trying to go back to sleep at 2 or 3 in the morning. And so that was the start of, well, let's see if this is possible. Let's do it as cheap as possible and see if we can build an MVP here and see if we've got some technical know-how to be able to do it, and actually if we can replace Clipfolio with our own product. So that was the start of the journey, the kind of the 2, 3 in the morning epiphany of, actually, why don't we build our own? Crazy, huh?
No,
Like, why would an accounting firm then decide to do it? We're busy, as you say, we're bloody busy as it is, with running a firm that's growing as well.
yeah, I mean, and there's a lot we could go into there, because I think there's a few different angles. One is, I think there are other accounting firms who have a pain point internally and decide, I'm going to go out and build this, assuming other accounting firms are also going to have the same problem. It sounds like your angle was more like, I'm not trying to sell this to anybody else. I'm just trying to solve this problem internally for my clients. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is a product or a service that we are, well, it's a product and a service that we're selling to our own existing clients, which is, there's a very clear focus on who we sell to. So it's e-commerce businesses, so it's fast growth e-commerce businesses and fast growth tech SaaS businesses. They have a common, if you kind of plot the characteristics of those on a Venn diagram, there's this big spillover of like lots of data, complex in nature, fast growth, demanding stakeholders, equity backed. So there's a lot of commonalities across who we work with. So we're very much trying to deliver to those, to our target market, rather than, hey, we're an accounting firm, we've come up with this product, let's sell it to accounting firms. Now, that's not to say in the future that accounting firms may be a channel, but ultimately we're building a product that works for us and our clients, and delivers value to them. That's what it's all about.
And I know from the work that you've done with us, and even before Early Adopters Hub, you've spent a fair bit of time working alongside other early stage startups, helping them shape their product, probably spending a lot of time with vendors that weren't solving your problems as well, trying to understand what they were doing wrong. Were there any key lessons that you kind of took from other startups in the market that you said from day one, we want to avoid this when we build something ourselves?
I'd like to say we took all those lessons and we applied them perfectly, and we built it absolutely, perfect first time. But the reality is, I don't know in Australia if you have the concept of the leaky plumber's tap. There's probably an element of that where outwardly you can be, hey, this is how you do it. These are the obvious steps and the plans you do. And then when you start and do something for yourself, actually you get a bit excited, passionate about it, and kind of, maybe jump in both feet first rather than doing everything that should be done. Because sometimes you think you know better, right? You advise someone, you sit on the other side of the table, and it's very easy to, consult, facilitate, advise, hey, this is what you should do. When you're the actual person or team doing it, you don't have that conscience necessarily. You don't have that independent person. You're kind of in it, and you're battling millions of things. And so sometimes you cut corners, or sometimes you don't follow your own advice. So I think a lesson there is have an independent conscience that can keep you honest. Yeah.
So, I mean, a particular strategy that I've seen. I mean, I think there's a lot in that, and it's very interesting. But given we're short on time, I have to move on to another area, and I'm curious about the build in public because you guys decided, I think, relatively early on in this journey to say, hey, we're going to actually communicate this journey with the world. I know you put out a few blogs about it and a few things that I've read. I guess I'm curious how you see this idea of building in public, sharing rather than keeping things secret. I mean, in the world of startups, IP is a lot, and some people like to really hold on to their ideas. But what's your opinion and perspective on that? Why did you choose to share it?
So I think so. So there's a few things here. So I think the first thing is we were a little further into the journey, maybe. So the first episode, episode 0, was a kind of catch up to, hey, this is where we are now, right? And we probably missed a bit. So we built a very first MVP in Plotly, which is a Python based kind of data visualization tool that you can grab a bunch of stuff. So it was kind of an immense amount of work went into it by Chris and the team, but it was done as an MVP, and then we kind of from then onwards we proved the thesis and then moved forward and built it differently, right? So we've kind of missed that out, but if we then bring it up to kind of episode 0, that was us going, actually let's do this in public and let's do a catch up from the last, I guess, 9 months or so. And so, hey, I wish we had from the January to the April the amount of progress that the episode 0 to 3 or 4 goes to. But I think that just kind of deviation, I think that's one of the main things that has been an eye opener for me, that things don't move as quickly as my ambitions have, and things take a lot longer to build than they do to say. And I think from a non-technical founder or co-founder of a tech product, that's a massive eye-opener, to be honest. And I think that's probably a reflection. I think that's probably something that I've become aware of when we talk to vendors and we get really frustrated as accountants. It actually takes a lot longer than we appreciate. So I've got more appreciation and more respect for vendors in the accounting world than maybe I did before this journey. But to go back to why we did building in public, there are I think a few things here actually. The first one was we obviously built an accounting firm, right, for the last 5 or 6 years, and not very often Luke and I reflected on that journey. And when we did, we thought, fuck, we've come a long way. Like we've been so focused on growth, on tomorrow, that we've not actually reflected on the achievements that we've had. And the very few times that we've reflected on those achievements, maybe an award ceremony, maybe having the team together at a trip or something, we kind of reflect on that and go, wow, like that's really incredible what we've achieved for us personally. And so I think there was definitely an element of going, okay, well, let's track this journey, because I think one of the regrets I have with Flinder is not tracking the journey as we went. I would have loved to have had, like, a fly on the wall Netflix series tracking us and going, like, hey, we're a small accounting firm, but like, and nobody's interested in watching that, save for other accountants, right? But tracking the journey nonetheless, I think would have been really. I'd have loved to see it back, to be honest. So that was one of the reasons. The other reason, being like completely transparent and authentic, we sell to tech companies. if we write a bunch of articles on the trials and tribulations on building on building a tech product in public, then actually that's good content that is relatable to our clients. So that's definitely another reason for that. And then the other one is, just an altruistic reason, in that, if we share what we're doing, will it inspire other people? Will it help other people cut some of those mistakes out? And so there's an element there of just, terrible phrase, but sharing is caring. And sharing that experience, then we do a lot in the accounting world. We give a lot in the world of accounting, and we share a lot of what we do in the accounting world. So I think there's an element there of people can learn from it. But to your point about IP, My view is, and we've had this view with the accounting with Flinder as well. When we talk on stages, we can give you all the ingredients, but you're not going to be able to bake the cake the same way we are, and that's just fact because there's so many things that go into it. There's the actual doing of it, there's the actual process, the actual inputs, and then there's the just the kind of the way we do it, the culture, the all of that kind of sews it together that just can't be replicated in the brand that we have. So I think sharing the steps and the processes and the mistakes is great for to inspire and help others, but they're never going to be able to recreate what we do.
Alastair, to pick on a point you've mentioned earlier, you said things didn't go as fast as you want, and I know in general nothing goes as fast as you want, but in particular with the tech product, and you said you've got a bit more empathy now for vendors. But what do you think is the lesson there? Do you need to be more strict with your planning, or better anticipate there's lots of unknowns as you try and develop a tech product?
I think there's an element that I'm an accountant. I'm a chartered accountant, right? I've launched a couple of small e-commerce businesses and sold them. I've never built a technology product before. Didn't really know what went into a technology product. Didn't really know the methodologies that go into doing it. And so there was an element of probably conscious incompetence there. I'm very aware of gaps, so very conscious of that. But naivety, ignorance, incompetence, all of those words probably describe me when it comes to the building technology product. So I think that was probably the driving factor behind. So I think that's probably driving factor behind the expectations more than anything. So my expectations are always up here, right, with everything I do or everything the team does. But I think there's probably a kind of realignment or resetting of expectations based on how long it actually takes to code, to debug, to build something. I think that's probably the fairest part in my lack of education in that area, which I do a lot about. During lockdown, I did a CS 106 coding bootcamp course, Stanford bootcamp coding course. There's a bunch of other things about continual learning specifically for that side of things. Where I guess a lot of accountants probably focus on CPD, and rightly so for their roles. Personally, I find all that, I've done it for 20 something years. I find all that stuff quite boring. What I find much more exciting is, how do you use Figma? For example, and kind of, the kind of the React side of things and the Python side of things with the product that we've got. But there's a balance to be had. But yeah.
So beyond that challenge, what other mistakes or challenges kind of stand out on the journey today?
I think one of them is definitely one of them is, if I wind back, my ignorance of not understanding the difference between, say, UX UI design and the actual development of the product. My assumption was, hey, you can roll that into one role, and sometimes you can with a very experienced person, but actually they're two clear separate roles, and there's a definite step one, step two there. Excuse me. And so I think that's something that held us up quite a bit. Yeah, that's a big one actually for us, and then maybe not also hiring senior enough people in the roles that we need, especially like to support the gap that me and Luke have in terms of driving the product forward from a technical perspective. So, we probably had a gap there in terms of seniority on the front end side of things. So that's another major gap that we probably had, or lesson learned going forward.
One last question before we get to our final question, which is always the tar pit question. And for this one, I'm keen to pick your brain from the perspective of an accountant who's very aware of the accounting tech ecosystem, very familiar with early stage startups in this space. You've seen a lot, you've worked with a lot. So not talking from your own experience now, talking about what you've seen as I suppose, as the customer or the end user. If the listeners are founders, if the listeners of this podcast are founders of future accounting tech startups, what is something that potentially you see a lot that you think is just an obvious mistake that they need to stop doing? I know this is taking a different direction to your own tech, but is there anything you'd like to say to the future founders out there?
I think where I've seen really successful products in the accounting world have been accountants. My concern and frustration when I see technology, not always, but predominantly, is when a founder doesn't really understand the market of accounting and what accountants need, what accountants do, and the broad, huge diversity in accounting firms. That, and just assuming everybody or all accountants are equal and are the same, work with the same types of clients. That's one of the biggest frustrations that I have and I see. So my recommendation to anyone that is thinking of starting a product would be really understand your key persona. And an accountant is not your key persona, because an accountant or an accounting firm these days is so diverse. And of course, they sell to key personas who have different challenges and different needs. So it's definitely really understanding that. And yeah, clearly, of course, it is speak to the guys at the Early Adopters Hub to do that, right? So that would be my key recommendation. Would be speak to you, Jack, and Johan.
No, I appreciate that. And the final question, because it wouldn't be the accounting tech tar pit without it. Do you have a classic tar pit mistake that you either you experienced doing this yourself, or that you see regularly as an accountant out there in the market, that on the surface looks like a great play, a great strategy, a great idea, but countless have tried it and it never works, or you tried it and it didn't work out?
Yeah, so I think there's probably two main things, right? And this is speaking from experience, and I think that is building a product on your own assumptions, yeah, or building technology on your own assumptions without doing enough validation and getting enough feedback and getting early paying customers. Now we had very early paying customers, even from kind of when it wasn't our product, right? But I think building a product on your own assumptions is probably the main one. And then the other one is, like, we've joked about it before in one of those Building a Public articles in the series. I put around, if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you've shipped too late. I still have our product is fucking ugly, right? And I'm still like, we need to make this better. We need to make it look better. And I think there is an element there. I think so actually we can unpack this, because because those two things go hand in hand, right? It's really important to ship a product and get feedback on it, so you're not making assumptions and go too far down the road and building a product that looks beautiful but actually has no commercial viability. So there's an element, right, getting feedback early on a product which is ugly and you're embarrassed by it. But as we all know, and we've talked about this before in the Early Adopters Hub, if it ultimately doesn't look good, you're not going to get engagement, because people will just be put off as soon as they log into it, right? And you can think about a Xero versus an SAP, or or back in the day, whatever the GLs used to look like in a DOS screen, right? there's clear engagement and user experience absolutely matters. But those two have to be finely managed in order to get the feedback on your assumptions and ultimately making it look great and being proud of it and having the engagement and the virality that you need the product to have. Otherwise, people just won't adopt it. But I don't know. I'd love to actually hear you throw it back at you and hear, like, from the early adopter sub. There's a lot of debate and discussion around a product looking good and having functionality. Now, clearly, like, you have a 2x2 matrix, it's in the top right, it looks great and is great, but there's probably a journey and a scale there where the product goes from looking crap, getting feedback, and moving into that. Now it looks good enough.
I think this is something that we can chat with you about on our little bonus for this episode in a little bit more detail, because that balance of managing your potential users' expectations and keeping them engaged and rewarding them with a good output, a good product, something that looks good, and benefiting yourself and learning as much as possible. It's a fine balance. It's walking a tightrope. And I think some founders use up too many of their clients and burn too many bridges before they launch, and the others don't talk to enough and build the wrong thing. So it's fraught with danger and something that we work very hard to balance. But anyway, we'll leave that conversation for after this, Alastair. And thank you very much. It was awesome to get your insight and to hear about the journey you've been on. And thanks for being open and honest about some of the challenges you've faced.
Cool. Awesome to hang out with you guys again. And hopefully, Jack, we'll get you along. We obviously had Johan over here in the summer a few weeks back, but hopefully we'll get you along in the winter and come along and do some skiing with us.
I'd love to, mate. I'd love to. All right. See ya.
Thank you.